All right, so yesterday we took a look at rendering content that was dynamic in that we could pass arguments to a stateless or even a stateful React component, right? Through a React stateful component, we could pass an attribute, and from within the stateful component, we could use the props, right? This.props to access anything that we passed in as an argument, yes? As an attribute. We also saw that we could do the same thing with a stateless component, right? Where a stateless component was just a plain old function, right? And then we can parse out the attribute that was being passed to us through a component's attribute. We could parse it out just by using the curly bracket notation, right? And then using it just as an expression embedded in our HTML. Let's take a look where we left off yesterday, right? I believe let's bring up our web store, and let's open up our project that we were working on last we met. So open, where's this, right? SU1 client React, yeah. No, this is not it. There we go. Yeah, so we built a module item, and that module item was a stateless component that took as argument an attribute that we passed in, and then we were able to just render it by referring to it here, embedded as an expression. Okay. Notice that this is a component that's being exported with module item, and then it's being referenced here in the module list, right? In the module list. The module list took as imported the module item, right, that we just declared here, and then we can refer to that module item as if it were an actual HTML element, right? So that's the beauty of React, right? Being able to encapsulate, lots of rendering and behavior, and encapsulate it all in one single HTML element that we can then just configure by passing attributes. In this case, we are passing this title. We're passing it into the module item, and then the module item can then reference that title by name, and then render it inside as an expression. Yes, right. That's the beauty of React. So we'd like to be able to do a little more, take this a little further, and perhaps instead of here providing. Here where we are statically copying and pasting every single module item, ideally we would have maybe like an array or something, right? An array of modules that would have properties such as title, and as we iterate over the array of modules, right, we can then dynamically render all these module items, right? So we'd like to do something like that. Okay, so let's see. Here we have the module list elements that we have rendered here, which is currently returning this module list item, which is static. What we'd like to be able to do is that in our rendering, let's see here we have the module list item. This is being implemented as a stateful element. We know how to convert either one to stateful and stateless, right? The only difference is that in a stateful it's a class, it's a full class as opposed to a function. In a stateful, instead of being a function returning right away, you might have a constructor, you extend the component, and you have to override the render function, right? If you're just a function, you just treat it as whatever you return is what gets rendered. So anyway, so there's the li returning the module. This is what we did yesterday, right? We were using the props title, and here we're passing it here as an attribute. What we'd like to be able to do is go a little further and perhaps declare an array of modules, right, with IDs and titles and whatnot, perhaps here declared in the parent module list, and then pass this elements to the list of modules. Right, and then iterate over it. Take those modules, and then iterate over them. And as we iterate over them, return and edit and display the module list item, and pass as we iterate over each one of them. Pass the title, pass a unique key identifier, right? And then the module list item can then render independently. So let's play around with this idea. Okay, I'm going to use a slightly newer syntax. This is still using the old JavaScript syntax. I'm going to use the ES6 syntax, right? But it's going to be equivalent, right? So you can take a look at the older JavaScript syntax, and you can compare with the newer ES6 syntax. All right. So let's do that. So here's our module list, right? Let me because it's a stateful component, we can have a constructor, and we can have super here. Right? Super is mandatory. So here we can declare other things, right? We can declare local variables, right? Local content, local data, or somebody might pass it to us. But let's declare it here locally, right? Because I am a stateful component, the fact that I have a constructor, the fact that I'm a class, the fact that I'm extending component, we are considered a stateful component. We have the unique possibility of declaring a local state variable on the current instance, right? This state variable is not just any variable, right? It's a special variable. It has to be called state, okay? The infrastructure, the React infrastructure where we're running, expects certain variables, certain functions, right? Constructor has to be called constructor. Render has to be called render. It expects certain keywords, certain functions to be called that way. All right. So in this state, we can put stuff here that initializes this component. Right? Initializes the component, and it represents the state of this component. It's an internal state. Whatever I put in here, it will be the current state of this component. For instance, the list of the modules that I want to render. Right? That's something that a module list might want to know. What am I rendering? Oh, this is what I'm rendering, right? And I remember what it is. And maybe I can even edit that state. Maybe I can add to it, right? Maybe I can remove it. Maybe I can edit things, the existing modules. Make sense? Right? They all are self-contained in here. All right, excellent. So let's declare here a modules, right? So in here, I'm free to put whatever I want, right? I'm going to create an attribute in my state, and I'm going to put it. It's going to contain an array of things, right? Of objects in here. Yes, and the objects might be things such as might have a unique identifier with a title, and the title might be organic chemistry. I might have other courses in here. This might be economics 101, and this might be quantum physics. All courses I'd love to teach. Okay, and then now this array, I would like to be able to use it, as a mechanism to dynamically render these module items. Yes, right. Actually, these are modules, not courses. These look like courses, not modules. All right, fine. Let's use that. Let's use that as if they were different modules of the same course. It'll be a very eclectic course. Chemistry. Okay. All right, excellent. So let's keep going. What I'd like to be able to do is render right here, right? Use this module item as if it were a template that I can iterate over my data. And as I iterate over the data, I want to build up several of these elements, right? And concatenate them all together. Yes? Right? All right, so to do that, we could do that. We can remember that we can use in the module item, inside of module item, notice that we can use the curly bracket to declare, to use expression, JavaScript expressions. In this case, title here is not the string title, it's the expression title, yes? That evaluates to some whatever value that we're passing along, right? So this is not the literal title, it's an expression title, yes? So curly brackets means expression. All right, Okay, so here we're going to create an expression. This expression is going to be somewhat elaborate, right? It's not just going to be a single variable. It's going to be an embedded expression, an embedded JavaScript expression. What am I going to do? I'm going to grab this module that's inside of the state. I'm going to grab it. I want to iterate over it. Okay, let's do that. I'm going to take this, that state, dot modules. Right now I am referring to this variable right here. Right? And what do I want to do? I want to iterate over it. Well, there's a whole bunch of new iterators in ES6. Right? We can use for each. There's for each. There's a whole bunch of them. Right? One particular one is of much interest here is the map. Anybody use map before? Right? Map, it allows you to iterate, not only iterate over the element, but it allows you to also accumulate, right? Whatever you return from the map is going to be concatenated, right? If this were an array, it would be adding to the array. If this is a string, it's going to concatenate to a string, right? It just builds up the content as whatever you return from the map, it gets concatenated. Make sense? Right? Which is exactly what I want to do. I want to generate a whole bunch of these, right? I want to generate a whole bunch of these, right? So I'm going to accumulate several of these guys, right? All right. So map works as follows. Map takes takes two arguments. We're going to be using just one of them for now. It takes two arguments. It takes in a function, right? And that function is the current element that I am iterating over right now. Yes. So if these are modules, well, this would be the current module that I'm just iterating. So this is the module, right? Module number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, as many modules I have. It's going to iterate over this array. Everybody okay? All right, excellent. So there's my module. So this module will the first time it will be this one, second time will be this one, and the third time will be that one. Everybody good? All right, excellent. And what we're going to do here is that what I want to do with that module is build one of these. I want to build one of those. Right? So I want to return one of these folks. Right? That's what I want to return. And what it's going to map do is going to take all these returns and they're going to concatenate them. Right? Building up one per object that we iterate over. Make sense? All right. All right. Let's see what we have so far, and let's navigate to that location. So let's see. Where are we? So we're going to go down to webdev, 2019, summer 1, and the React. WebDev 2019, go to the client. There we go. So let's do an npm start. And okay, there we go, right? So notice that the first three here are the ones that we are dynamically rendering. The other ones below me are the ones that we are statically rendering. Yeah, let's remove the static ones. Let's remove the static ones. These down here, let's remove those. Okay, let's refresh. Notice that I only have those three, and they are all returning HTML, and that's because I'm always passing the title HTML. See that? But what I want to pass here is what? It's the title inside of the module. Yep. Yep. So we're going to. So how do I refer to this expression module.title? How do I do that? We can say module, dot title. Yes. Yeah, exactly, right? So it cannot be the literal. If I just use the string, it will literally just render module.title, right? What I want to do is to distinguish this from an expression. It says, no, this is not the literal. I want you to interpret this as an expression. So we use curly bracket to say evaluate the expression and then pass whatever value that is. See that? So notice that indeed now we're teaching a course that has those three modules. Yes. Right. So if you put it in quote, it'll evaluate it to a string. Oh no, you don't need that. No. Otherwise, it'll again assume that it's a you literally mean the curly bracket. Yeah. So one more thing, if we inspect over here, you'll notice that there's a error here, and it's complaining that as I am rendering the module list, it's missing the key property. The key property, right? React wants to be able to keep track of all these elements that it's rendering to the DOM. It's want to make sure that they are all uniquely identified, right? Because it can do some optimization, right? So that if something changes in JavaScript, that maybe you remove one, or you add something, or you edit something, that it doesn't have to re-render the whole thing, right? That it can tell what changed, right, in the model, in the data model, so that it can go back and edit the DOM, so it doesn't have to re-render the entire DOM, but it can only just render that little piece. Yes, React is full of such optimizations, right, to make sure that it can render it can pump out the DOM as fast as it possibly can, right, without having to do unnecessary updates. So to uniquely identify these elements, it wants us to add an additional required property called key, right, that we have to uniquely identify, right? So what could we use as a unique identifier? Well, there's two things that we could use. One of them is we can use the second argument to the function is an index, right? This index will tell you index 0, 1, 2, 3, the nth element in the collection, right? We could use that. We could use as an index, right? And that would work, right? It's no longer complaining. It is uniquely identified. Another option we could do is we could use presumably these modules have these unique identifiers. We could use that too, right? As long as we guarantee that those are unique, and presumably they are, right? These are presumably primary keys in some database, in some table, right? That we're going to be reading at some point. So it would be module.id also would work as well. Everybody okay? Make sense? All right, awesome. What else here? Let's clean this up a little bit. And notice that I don't need the index anymore because I was using the module.id. Okay, it still works fine. I'm going to clean it up in that I'm going to transform this into the new ES6 notation, right? The new syntax, and you'll see that the new syntax is so much more terse, right? It's much more compact, right? So one of the things that we could do here is that we can remove the function, right? And we can replace it with an arrow function, okay? Already it looks a little much prettier, right? If we refresh, notice that indeed it just renders the same. Yes? All right? The other thing that we can do here is that since we only have one argument, since we have just one argument, we don't really need the parentheses is optional. We don't really need the parentheses, right? If we had two arguments, then yes, you need the parentheses. But we just have one, so the parentheses are optional, right? So again, this just renders the same. Everybody okay? Also, because the only thing that we're doing here is returning, right? That's all we're doing. We're not computing anything. We're not doing any calculations. This is the only thing we're doing, just returning right away. The return is really is not needed, right? It's an implied return. I don't even need the curly brackets, right? So this becomes just module and returns just this module item, right? If we refresh, notice that it renders the same. Make sense? Right. So this is much more terse, much easier to read, as long as you understand what's going on and you read the syntax. Yes.
There's this talk my company did. We deconstructed the state, so we just did let curly braces modules equals the substate, and then we don't have to have this substate module. We just go modules.path.
Yeah, we're going to get rid of that too, right? The this.state.modules, right? Especially if we're going to pass it along to some other component. For instance, one of the things that we might want to do here, right, is that instead of this module item might have more than just a title, right? the module might have lots of different things. So instead of passing every single attribute down to the module, right, we could instead just pass the entire module, right, and just pass the module as an object, right, that's being passed to us. See that, right? Then, because the module might have not only title, how many seats there are, how many sections it is in there. So there might be a whole bunch of other fields in there that I don't need to pass one by one, right? I can just pass the entire module. You render it. Here's the module, right? So in the module item, we could grab the module, as opposed to just the title, and then we can just use the module.title. We're passing all sorts of other elements in there. Okay? We render, so no longer do we need the title. It's optional. We don't need to even pass it along here. That's if we have lots of other fields that we want to pass along, not just a title. Yes? Yep. Everybody okay? All right, awesome.